We can go to the next of those questions now, and it comes from David Mansfield.
Good evening. What are your priorities for making Britain a safer country and the world a safer place?
Thank you. What are your priorities for making Britain a safer country and the world a safer place? Paul Nuttall.
Well, it's quite clear that the war in Iraq and the bombing of Libya was fundamentally wrong, because all we were doing is we were removing, yes, evil dictators, but it was quite clear that what was going to come next was going to be even worse. But our foreign policy isn't an excuse for what went on in Manchester, and what politicians need to do is at least have the courage to name what it is. It's Islamist extremism. Okay? It's Islamist extremism. But nobody seems...
Let him have his.
Tim, you've just had a diatribe, so, you know, let's crack on.
It's your turn for diatribe.
It's Islamist extremism. Nobody seems to have the courage to say what it is. How we solve it? Well, we put 20,000 police officers back on the beat, 4,000 more on the border force. We tighten our borders, 7,000 new prison officers, because radicalisation is rife within our prisons. And I must say, I can't believe that we've allowed 350 jihadis to return to our country from Libya and Syria. I'm sorry, if you go out and fight or support Islamic State, you should have your passport revoked and you should never be allowed back into this country. Now, what we've also got to do is look at radicalisation within our own mosques. And I will say, Amber, I think you need to look at Saudi and Qatari funding of mosques in this country. And finally, we need to get the Muslim community itself to sign up to the Prevent programme. Only 1 out of 8 referrals to Prevent come from within the Muslim community. We have to rebuild trust and confidence in Prevent.
You know, Paul, that the murderer last Monday was reported 5 separate occasions by the Muslim community. They want our safety as much as anybody else.
Caroline Lucas.
Of course. I mean, the vast majority of Muslims in this country are peaceful, they add to our economy, they're great for our culture, but there is a tiny minority within that community who hate who we are, hate the way we live, hate our democracy, and I've called it a cancer in the past. Radical Islam is a cancer and it needs to be cut out. If not, there'll be more attacks like
Manchester. And you haven't ruled out locking up suspected terrorists.
Sorry?
You haven't ruled out locking up suspected terrorists without trial. Would that really make us safer?
Well, frankly, I've said nothing should be taken off the table. As far as I'm concerned, you know, when MI5 tell us that there's a possible 23,000 jihadis out there who want to do us harm, I'm sorry,
they hate our freedom and our liberty.
Let me finish.
Not give away our freedom and our liberty.
I've always put
Angus Robertson
British lives over the human rights of any jihadi any day.
I remember the question was about terrorism and extremism, and you notice that UKIP went straight for Muslims.
Angus Robertson.
Well, the first thing is, I imagine at the forefront of your minds, and I'm sure I speak for all of my colleagues here, at the forefront of all of our minds are all of the families who suffered the devastation to their loved ones and relatives with the attack on Manchester. What happened there was a horror, and sadly it's happening far too often, both here and round about the world. So I think the first thing that we need to do is that we do need to take safety and security seriously. We need to invest in the police, not cut them as has been the case in England. In Scotland, we've managed to maintain police numbers, so that's my first step. Let's make sure we back the police, give the resources that they need, back our intelligence services who do a tremendous job. There's been some discussion, has there not, about the link between UK foreign policy and becoming perhaps a terrorist threat, and I think that's a dangerous link to draw. However, I would say this. I think we are right to question our intervention in different parts of the world, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya. And the lesson I draw from that is not that it is wrong sometimes to intervene. We agreed that helping people in Libya was a good thing. But what was wrong was spending 13 times more bombing that country than helping to rebuild it, and leaving areas of the world leaving areas of the world with ungoverned spaces is where terrorism and extremism thrives. So we need to do everything that we can to counter extremist thought, give the police and security service the tools that they require. So not cutting the police would be a first step that I would take from Scotland's experience. And I think we want to be very cautious about how we intervene internationally. And if we're going to do it, we have to think long and hard about how we make sure that those places remain stable and safe for years to come.